Hi, this is Matthew Robert Payne. I hope you enjoy this video. This is an extensive advice for book publishing. There would really exist some wonderful books on self-publishing that would go into a lot more detail, but I thought I'd release a short video on YouTube and make an online audible book, audio book for other platforms to help people get some ideas about self-publishing. So this is handy advice for people self-publishing non-fiction. So I've written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of notes. So it should take a little while, maybe over an hour or two. I'm not sure, probably an hour. So we'll go, first of all, have a clear message that you want to bring to the people. This is in writing the book, firstly. When you go to write the book, have a clear message expressed in a title. You can look up Matthew Robert Payne on Amazon, and you'll see that it's pretty clear what each of the books are by my titles. I had an advantage in life. I read a number of books on advertising, and they taught you how to write a clear and succinct headline for an article, headline for an ad. And because I got a lot of training in headlines, I was able to write book titles. But I've got a friend who's a very successful Christian author called Praying Medic, and he writes at about 8 to 10 headings, like titles, and his wife picks the one that she reckons will be the best one, and she's got a background in publishing. She also does the layup of the PDF file and the Kindle file, and she's able to do the cover for him. So she's like a publishing house for him, and he just writes the book. So you need to have a clear message in the title. So my title is Handy Advice for People Self-Publishing Non-Fiction. I'm only can talk on non-fiction because I don't write fiction. I have written fiction in the past. I've got no published fiction, so I stick with non-fiction. So have a clear message, and don't be afraid to write 10 or 20 titles before you pick the top 3, and then you can even run the top 3 past a few people to do it. I would write a few titles and give them to your editor for your editor to pick the title, or even tweak the title that you want. The second thing I'd have you do, I'm a Christian, so I can hear the Holy Spirit and hear God speaking to me. So the Holy Spirit will help me write out chapter titles. And what you want to do is start at the very basics of your message, and then wind that message out with successive chapter titles. So you start with the very start and the very foundation, and you build the foundation through piece by piece by piece to build the solid house, what becomes your book. But brick by brick, putting it together chapter by chapter. Now you want your chapters to be equal length. So if you've got messages that are going to be 8 pages and most of your messages are 4 pages, you could just title one part 1 and title another one part 2 and make them 4 pages each. So if you're aiming for 4 pages or 5 pages each chapter, try and make it all line up. Try and make it. Don't have 5 pages and 2 pages, then 7 pages and 12 pages, and try and have each chapter around about the same amount of words. So you could have 20 or 40 chapters, depending on how big you are. Now, don't overwrite your book. If your book is going to be just 20 pages, well, people will buy a 20-page book on Kindle. They don't mind buying a 20-page book on Kindle. If you think it's going to be 40 or 50 pages, that's good. People will read a 40 or 50-page book. I know I'll pay $3.99 for a 40 or 50-page book. Depending on what it is, I'll even pay $9 for a 50-page book. So please don't overwrite. Don't feel you need a 150-page book and have 40 pages worth of material stretched to 150 pages. If you're a charlatan and you're trying to be a charlatan and make a quick buck doing Kindle books, well then that would encourage you to overwrite, because you want a lot of pages in your book so that it'll sell well. On the other side of the scale, don't underwrite. So don't think using 2 stories or 3 stories is too much. Don't make your point and explain your point with an illustration, but if you've got 2 or 3 illustrations to further explain the point, use them. Don't hold them back thinking you're overwriting. So don't underwrite. Use the material, use the stories, use your life as well as you can. I've never overwritten. I've never underwritten. Kindle is so good as a publishing platform because you can really write a 20-page book and you can have a 400 or 1,000-page book on Kindle. It doesn't matter. So there should be no excuse underwriting or overwriting. And I can tell you 90% of my sales are on Kindle. So I only make paperbacks and hard covers for people because some people like them. But if it was too expensive for me to make a hardcover or a paperback, I wouldn't do it. I'd just sell all my books on Kindle. And since I've started to publish audiobooks, and this is one of my first audiobooks that I'm speaking and just preaching on video on YouTube. Once I get this down pat, this will be one of my favorite ways of teaching. Then I don't even have to write a Kindle book. I can just publish these audiobooks. What do they call them? What do they call a band when it plays live? Uncut. This is Matthew Robert Payne Uncut. Now, here's a key. Here's a key that I have. When you're writing nonfiction, pretend that you're writing to one person. So the person I write to is an average Christian who has a love of God, but is searching for answers and is hungry to know more and more about God. That's a sort of person I write to encourage them and to inspire them to go better, to increase their faith and better serve their faith before God. If you can focus in on one person with all your books, you'll be able to just pretend that you're sitting across from them at a table and speaking to them. How would you speak to that friend of yours? How would you speak to that imaginary person? What would you say to them in chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3? What stories would you involve? for that 16-year-old girl or 25-year-old woman who's been divorced. Get a picture of your ideal person that you want to reach. Maybe you're reaching people who've been sexually molested and raped, and you're writing to victims to talk about your recovery process and how not to hold bitterness and how to forgive and how to get your body image back and how to get your self-esteem back. And think of that girl like you, or the girl that isn't you at the moment, but encourage the person to become like you. Get a good picture of that person in your head and write your message to them, just like a 50 or 100-page book to them. Just write it like a story to them, and that'll really help you with your writing. Don't think you're going to cast this wide net on a whole lot of people and catch a whole lot of fish. Write to a specific person, and that's just my key. And I've had about 20 people at least write to me and say, it's like I was just at a cafe and you were talking to me. And that's exactly what I do. And that's exactly what I'm doing to you who are listening to this audiobook or this video. I'm just doing that for you. I'm recording a video just for you. Now, my next point is feel free to throw yourself under a bus to illustrate a point. So I'll use this example. For 25 years, I had an addiction to prostitutes and I had an addiction to pornography. And I'm recently been freed up a little bit of that. But that kept me really broke and without a lot of money. And when I started self-publishing books, I just didn't have the money to be spending on that. So I can hold a lot of money, use a lot of money and be really faithful with my spending now. But for all those years I had the prostitution and addiction, I was always broke. I always didn't have money. And so since Jesus has started me on this process of publishing books, I've been able to live lightly and frugally because I've been doing that for 25 years. So thousands of dollars would come through my accounts every month and I'd be good with the money. I wouldn't waste it. And so the experience of having the addictions actually helped me. Now, this is the point that I'm making. Feel free to throw yourself under a bus. I just did that. Now, what's the purpose of that? Well, the purpose is that what I want to say is it doesn't matter who you are, how unqualified you are. It doesn't matter if you had an addiction to prostitutes or pornography for years. It gives you authority to speak in those areas. Number one, if you're speaking to people with those sort of addictions. Number two, it makes me feel normal. You don't seem abnormal to me anymore. Like you feel like you're better than me already because you haven't had that sort of life. But another thing Candor does, it's called the law of Candor. Another thing about being truthful about bad things is that people say, well, if he'll say those bad things about himself, I can pretty much trust him on the other things he says because, he's willing to throw himself under a bus. Now, that telling you that addiction to prostitutes and pornography wasn't throwing myself under a bus to illustrate a point so much. I've built the point around it. But if you're talking about angels, for instance, and meeting angels, you could say how, I'll say I was meeting saints, right? Saints from heaven. Abraham turned up and I said, well, prove that you're Abraham. And he said, well, Rebecca was stunning. And I said, well, what's the scripture reference from that? And he said, oh, such and such verse, chapter such and such, verse such and such. And I looked up the, I don't know, Genesis or whatever, or it's in Genesis chapter 26, verse 2, or wherever it was. I looked it up, and it said Rebecca was very beautiful. And that was the confirmation that I got that he was Abraham, or whoever turned up, I think it was Abraham. And so he said she was very, very beautiful, which is stunning, isn't she? And so now people who think I'm real smart with saints, and I get on with a lot of saints from heaven, and I've met a lot of saints from heaven, I think I'm really foolish saying that to Abraham, like, prove you're Abraham. They'll be saying, why you ask him that? He doesn't have to prove who he is. And so feel free to throw yourself under a bus. That's in American. If you're not American, it essentially means embarrass yourself when you're making the point. Feel free to do that as often as you like. And the people that are listening to you or reading your book will appreciate that, hey, this guy will say anything. Like, we can really trust him, and it builds rapport. I've got a friend who's another successful writer, Michael Van Weiman, and a Christian writer, and he says that's one of the things he admires most about my writing, that I'm not afraid to throw myself under a bus to make a point. And he really admires that in me. He admires me for that. And I didn't know what throwing yourself under a bus was when he told me that, because I'm Australian. It's not an Australian colloquialism, but it is over there, so I know what that is for all you American people. Okay, give people a slice or two of you. Well, you found out that I'm a guy who meets people out of the Bible. They come to my house. That seems, that guy must be really crazy. As a guy who's got a 25-year addiction to prostitutes and pornography, that guy is really crazy. Throw slices of yourself out. As you share your message, as you're preaching your message, as you're sharing your message, give them a piece of you too. When my wife left me 27 years ago, the lights in my life went out, and it went really dark. And there hasn't been many weeks since I lived in this earth where I didn't want to go home to heaven. I've been in almost a suicidal state for 27 years, and that's another slice for you. So people who've had a wife leave them, or people who've broken up in a marriage, a part of you goes with that marriage. So that's another slice. So I'm reminded of a bee, a normal worker bee. If they sting you, a third of their body comes out with the sting, so they die. So if you threaten them, they'll sting you, but they'll die for stinging you. It's only the protector sort of general bees that can sting you and they still live. So I compare writing as like bleeding on paper. And some of a famous writer said that. But your writing should be like a bee sting. When you've produced a book, you should be able to recover for a while, getting over purging yourself and writing that book. But give them parts of you when you write. Now you could go over the top. You could be always talking about yourself and not making a point in your fiction, in your non-fiction. But you get I hope you get an understanding of what I mean there. We've covered this chapters the same length if possible. I often do audio chapters, so I'll preach 10 minutes. Well, I was doing a lot of books on audio files, so I just do 10-minute audio files. Some of the files went 12 minutes, some of them went 8 minutes, depending on what I had to say for the chapter. But a lot of my books were done on audio files. and now I do a lot of YouTube. So the next book I'm producing will be just a YouTube video that's been typed up and edited, but it's 7 hours worth, so it's a lot. So keep chapters the same length if possible, as much as you can. People wouldn't appreciate a 3-page book and 3-page chapter than a 12-page chapter than a 5-page chapter. And my next point is, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. I've proven that in my transparency as we've gone along, but don't be afraid of being vulnerable in any way. You'll find, well, it's sad, but our friends aren't our greatest supporters. I've found the people that know me the most help me the least. And so it doesn't matter if you're vulnerable in your book, because most of your friends won't be reading your book. And that sounds really negative, but my mum read a few of my books, but I didn't really have any friends that read any of my books. So being vulnerable to strangers is easy. Okay, so that's sort of the makeup of the book. I've got 2 other books that are audiobooks too on writing a book, but I've made this just especially to make a YouTube video, but also to make it an audiobook to be sold on Apple. So I hope that was helpful for you. Now we're going to go to the editing chapter. This is a new chapter. So this is about editing. So the process of the 30 or 40 of my books, I did 10-minute audio files. So I spoke my books and edit the typed words 2 to 3 times. So I would speak my book, and I remember I did my interview with King David. I did 40 chapters, 40 10-minute chapters, about 6 hours of speaking. That 6 5 to 30. Yeah. I think whatever, it was 5 hours worth of speaking, and I just turn off the voice file, label it voice file 29, load up a new voice file, record it, title it number 30, and keep on going until I was finished. And I did 5.5 hours or so worth of talking, and that was a mammoth edit. But I did the first draft of my book in 6 hours. So I used to speak 10-minute files, and I really suggest this method of just speaking a chapter and then getting it typed. And I pay for typing, but that doesn't worry me. So if you're writing chapters, just sit down and write 1 chapter. Write 4 to 5 pages, sit down for an hour or 2 and write it. And what I mean, I don't mean in longhand, I mean type it. So get on your laptop, a comfortable keyboard, and type it. I think I can type 3 to 4 A4 pages on Word in about an hour. So make some time to write your book. So whether you type it or not, put yourself three days a week where you're going to write a chapter, and just go to it and write your 20 to 40 headlines, your 20 to 40 chapter titles, and get down and type them 3 to 4 chapters a week, and just go for it. But I used to speak my books, and so when they were typed up, the typist didn't type it right, and it doesn't spoken words aren't as good as written words. You can't just produce the transcript because it doesn't sound right. So I used to go through my books 2 to 3 times, editing and polishing what I said. Then I'd give it to my editor. I have a professional editor based in the USA, and she copy edits. So she grabs my words and rewrites my words to make them sound better. So she's more of the writer of my books than myself, but she couldn't write the books because she hasn't got the content. So I would provide her with the content, and she would write my books. Now, I could swear to you, I can't tell the difference between what she does and what I did. But I don't ever ask for the word file with all the tracking on it. But you'd see crossed out words and crossed out paragraphs and crossed out this, and ways that she's changed the words and added. If you see one of those tracking things on Word, she does a lot of work on my on my books, and I'm happy you did. I'm an Australian, and my readership was in the USA, and so there's a lot of Australian words that aren't used properly in the USA. USA doesn't know them, but as my editor, she knows what to write. She knows how to edit my English into English. USA English. I speak the Queen's English and write the Queen's English. So the word colour is COLOUR for Australia, but in America it's COLOR. And jail is different in Australia, and there's a whole lot of words. Now, I want you to get serious here. It's going to cost you a serious amount of money to have a professional editor edit your book. And my editor, she'll do a copy edit on my book. Then we'll read over my book over Skype. We'll read the book back and forth over Skype, sentence by sentence. We probably do about, I think we do about 30 pages per session. So if it's 60 pages, it takes 2 sessions. We can do about 30 A4 pages. Then we read it and edit it again, and she goes through it one more time, checking all the Bible verses and all the references and all the points and the spelling and the grammar. And then when she's finished, we send it to a copy editor that charges 1.5 cents a word. Not a copy editor, a proofreader that charges 1.5 cents a word. And my editor charged me a special price for years when I was producing 1 book a month. So her price has gone up now because I haven't given her a book in 6 months. So now my copy editor does the heavy lifting of my books, and I'll supply my copy editor's email at the end of this program, on the end of this video, at the end of this audio book. I'll supply her email address, and you can write to her if you want your book copy edited. If you're going to self-publish, not having your book professionally edited, it's like shooting yourself in the foot. I can't stress that enough. People want to self-publish their book, and they say that it's not going to cost anything, and they're going to get their school teacher or their lost aunt to be a professional editor for them, and they think they can work it out, and they've got a friend who's going to edit their book for them. But your English teacher or your aunt or your school teacher, they're not a professional editor. A professional editor is someone who makes a living out of editing. And my editor's fantastic, and I've had 3 offers of people to edit my books for free, and I just won't accept it. There's no way they'd do the 3-stage editing that my editor does. My editor is fantastic, and you'll find her fantastic too, maybe, if you write to her too. One person wrote in a review of one of my books, that it was really shameful for me to be suggesting other people. I thought the opposite is the case. I'm thinking, if you spend all this time writing a book, it would be good to have a recommendation of a good editor. And so she's a Christian editor, but she could edit non-Christian work. And she's also good because she doesn't argue with my theology, which is, in Christian terms, is my way of thinking of certain Bible verses. Even if she disagrees with my point, she doesn't disagree with me. She edits my point to make it sound more like my point rather than what she agrees with. And so it's really good. But I've got to stress that the people who offer to edit your book aren't editors. And even if they are a proper editor or have worked as an editor, they should be an editor now. You could get a bit tired and worn down. If you're an editor 20 years ago, you might remember stuff. My editor's got this manual that she uses all the rules of this manual, and she's really pedantic about a whole lot of things. So there's a lot that goes into it. So she's quite expensive, my editor, and it's going to cost you a fortune for a really good editor. But it depends what you want to do. If you just got one book that you want to write, that's fine. You just put out a book with spelling and grammar mistakes and an unprofessional book. But if you're going to make a living or you're going to put out a number of books, you don't want people writing on your first book, this needed to be edited. This person needs to get a better editor. And believe me, people write those reviews if your editing isn't good. Now, I also get a proofreader to read my book after my editor because, books in publishing houses have 4 to 5 sets of eyes that look at something. When I reread what I've written, I imagine in my head what I meant to say, and I don't read what I actually wrote. So I knew the message I was trying to give, and so I can read my writing when it doesn't say that, but I'll think it says that. Well, the copy editor, once she copy edits something, she's got in her mind the idea of what she's written. So when she rereads it, that's what she thinks that she's written. So you need multiple eyes on a book to get all the errors out. And that's why you find errors in newspapers and magazines, because it costs a lot of money to get more than one set of proofreaders to proofread your book or edit your book. So I pay a proofreader 1.5 cents a word to proofread after my editor, and it all adds up. It's very expensive, and this is why I'm happy to do videos and let it go straight to audiobook, because I'd just be happy if people followed my audiobooks and I didn't have to go to the expense of producing books all the time. So you've got a choice here. You can do it on the cheap, or you can pay some price. So when I give you the, I'll give you the editor's email address now, and so her name is Lisa Thompson, and Write by Lisa. So it's WRITE by BY Lisa LISA @gmail.com. So write by Lisa @gmail.com. So she's my editor, and if she'll have a look at your manuscript and decide how much editing she'll have to do on a chapter or two, and then give you a price. And you're quite willing to say no to the price and find someone cheap. But cheap is cheap is cheap is something we say in Australia, and so that's quality. So that's quality for her. And when I come up to my friend Bill that helps me self-publish my books, I'll give you his email address too. Now we come to the subject of the cover. What's that saying? I forget the first. You can read a book by its cover or something. I forget. This audio book isn't going to be edited, so for Apple iBooks, so you can don't judge a book by its cover. Well, there, I got it. Now, I wish that wasn't true. If you're looking on Apple Books or any other source of books, you'll see my audio books of professionally done, and you'll see the cheaper $25 ones done by Bill, and it's just not the same standard of cover. And so if you get things done cheap, they look cheap. And so when you're getting a book cover done, you want to hire the best. It's just I haven't got the money to pay professional cover designer for all these audiobooks. So you'll see my professional book covers, and you'll see the cheaper looking covers on some of the audiobooks if you're in the audiobook section. Now, one of the good parts of a paperback or even a Kindle is the back cover blurb, what the back cover is. And this is something I recommend you get your editor to write that. Sometimes as a writer, you can be too close to your subject to actually write a good blurb. So towards the end of my relationship with my editor, before I stopped writing 6 months ago, I was having her write them, and she was doing them for $50 US. So she'd write one for me, and my editor's a writer too in her own right. And so I'd have her write the blurb for me. So you can also have your editor write the title for your book. So you could, I may have said this, you could write your 8 titles out and give your best 3 to your editor, and she could pick the one or edit one of your 3 to the correct cover. Definitely have your editor capitalize the words that have to be capitalized, and lowercase the words that are lowercase. So getting onto a cover, you need to hire a professional book cover designer. Now, I've got a book cover designer in India, I think he is, and that's normally in my books. His membership is Akira, AKIRA 777 on Fiverr. Fiverr is a freelance website. So that's his name, Akira, AKIRA 777, and he designed all my professional book covers. When you go on Fiverr, or you go on a freelance website, or you find someone through a family member who knows a cover designer or someone, check out their portfolio. If you don't like the covers they're producing, don't get one done by them. go through Fiverr, take your time, and find someone designing covers that you really like. And ask them how much it's going to cost you. Now, if you're like me, you can pick the picture that's meant to go with the cover. And my cover designer had could buy a Shutterstock paid image for any of my covers with the money that I paid him for the job. He could buy 2 pictures for me and pick between the 2. And I decided after a few books, no, I'll just get him to buy 1 and I'll pick the picture myself. And so I used to go in and pick the picture that I wanted on the book. Now, if you can do that, if you've got a bit of graphic art sort of skills in you to be able to pick covers, well, you pick the picture and get your cover designer to use that as the picture on your book. The picture has to relate to the subject of the book. So it's a bit of a skill to have, and I'm fortunate that God has given me the skill. Now, don't go to a cover designer and pay good money for a cover, like it can be $600 Australian for some Western. My one costs $210 Australian. The cover designer I used. Don't pick a cover designer when their portfolio you don't like. Make sure you find someone with a portfolio of covers and there's a few that you like. Don't spend your money and be unhappy. Don't produce a book that you're unhappy with. Please don't produce a book that you're unhappy with any of the parts of it. Now, when the cover designer is doing it, don't be afraid to get changes made or edits done to the cover to your liking. If something's off, if you're not happy, if you can decide what's off and what change you need, don't be afraid to get your cover designer to change the cover design 2 or 3 times. Another important point is have your editor proofread the title, even have them edit what you wrote. So there's 2 points on there. Have them edit the best 2 or 3 titles that you picked. Let her pick the 1 out of the 3 that she likes and let her edit it. But also have her proofread the title of your book. So have the time to show her the cover and the blurb before you paid her, before you sign off on the deal for your cover. Make her proofread the title, the subtitle, and the blurb on the back to make sure there's no errors. It is such an embarrassing thing to have a book where the title is wrong, where there's a grammar mistake in the title or in the blurb. So have your editor check that it's perfect before you sign off on the job. So that's covers. Now, when you have a manuscript and you have a cover, then there's one more thing you need. You need your Microsoft Word document turned into a PDF for it to be made into a paperback. And it has to be written in the Kindle format to be made as a Kindle book. Now, you can hire a freelancer to do your PDF and Kindle files for your paperbacks and your Kindle books. I have one. I don't have their name, but I had one I used to use, but I can't log on there at the moment. But I'll give you Bill Vincent's email address. It's Bill Bill dot Vincent VINCENT at yahoo.com. So Bill.Vincent at yahoo.com. Now, he does a deal for me, $250, and he'll make an audio book of my book. He'll make the PDF paperback, and he'll make the Kindle book. Now, he'll handle the paperback. He'll put that onto Amazon for you, and he'll put Kindle onto Kindle for you. And there's a certain percentage of your royalty he'll take for doing that. But he does, if you can design your cover, and you can design, if you can get your cover design and send him the cover designs, and you can get your Word file edited and in a perfect position, he does that for about $300 US for me, and that's a really good price. And I'd imagine he'd be able to do that for you if you said that you came and you heard of that in this audiobook and on this video. So Bill Vincent, now he is really good, and I moved away from him and started doing it myself, and now my future books I'm going to be doing through him again. So it just makes it a whole lot easier. Now, there's a certain process that you need to do to load it up onto Amazon if you're going to do it yourself. And there's videos that can teach you how to do that. Now, one point I wanted to make, and this should have been in the section about your actual manuscript, but make sure you use your book to promote your website, your social media, and how to get in touch with you. That's really important, that if you have a website to promote your book, that you have the website address in the Kindle book so they can click on it and it's an active link and they can go to your website. You want to list your social media contacts, your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter accounts at the end of your book, and you want to give them your email so they can get in touch with you. Use the paper in your book to advertise yourself. So the whole process of self-publishing, the most expensive part of it will be your editing. But if you want Bill to do the PDF and the Kindle files, then you can write to him and ask him what's a special price, seeing as Matthew Robert Payne sent you. So the next subject is reviews. If you've got quite a number of friends on Facebook that you didn't grow up with but are strangers, but they like your posts and they interact with you, I would suggest you post on Facebook. You can even join different writing groups on Facebook. You can write, can some people read your Microsoft Word book before it's published and write a review for you, so when you release the book that you can give them the money to buy your book, or you can buy a book on Kindle for them and send it to them, and so they can have a verified purchase. I think all the reviews have to be verified on Amazon, which means the person reviewing the book has to have bought the book off Amazon. So if you had 3 or 4 friends say that they'll write reviews for you when you're asked on Facebook, when they do read your PDF, you need to buy them a Kindle book, and you can send them a Kindle book as a gift to the email. If they come up as people who've got one of your books, then they can write a verified purchase, or you can get them to buy it direct and just refund them the money, and that's quite all right with Amazon rules, because Amazon allows you to give them a free book. So try and get 2 or 3 friends to be able to write a good review for you, because it's really important that a book has reviews. It's really, really important. I won't buy it. Doesn't matter how good a person title is and what their blurb looks like. Doesn't matter how good they are. If they haven't got a book, it's if they haven't got a review, it's very, very rare that I would buy a book that hasn't been reviewed on Amazon. I depend on Amazon reviews before I make a decision. So it's imperative to have a success as a book to have reviews done on the book. You can't, Amazon says you can't pay people to do it, and so it's illegal to do it, and they could just blacklist you from Amazon. So you don't want that to happen, but maybe you've got 2 or 3 friends on Amazon, on Facebook that you can give. Even what I did was say, if I can buy them the Kindle book, then when the paperback comes out, you'll send them a paperback signed copy, and you're allowed to do that because you're giving them a book. So that's all right. So I did that one day and got 20 reviews off former friends I had on Facebook. I cut my Facebook down to 150 people now, so I don't have all the 4,500 friends anymore. So now, here it's imperative. You've got start pages, the copyright page, the dedication page, the acknowledgement page, but always include a half page or a couple of paragraphs at the end of a book and invite people to write a review if they enjoyed the book. It is the last thing they read, and they may go right away to Amazon to do your review. So people don't get bored in print. So you can write on the last page one more thing, like your contact details and stuff. My website's here, just get in touch and just get in touch. You can read what I say in the end of my books, because it's perfect what I say. It's been reviewed and edited so many times, and I can actually go and find it. I can go and find what I've said. And why don't I do that? You don't mind a little stall in the thing. Reviews are so important. It's such an important thing. So I'm gonna. So this is what I'm just flicking through my book. Normally, so this is what I have, and you can edit this. I'd love to hear from you. One of the ways you can bless me as a writer is by writing an honest and candid review of my book on Amazon. I always read the reviews of my books, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about this one. Before I buy a book, I read the reviews first. You can make an informed decision about a book when you've read enough honest reviews from readers. One way to help me sell this book and to give me positive feedback is writing a review for me. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps me and the future readers of this book enormously. To read my blog and request a life coaching, or request your own personal prophecy, or request an angel message, go to personalprophecytoday.com, http://personal-prophecy-today.com. All of the funds raised through my ministry website will go towards books I write and self-publish. So that's an example of what I say, but the title of it is I'd love to hear from you. And I tell them in that, I'm saying, one way I'd love to hear from you is through the form of a review. And I actually got the seed of that idea from another really great Christian writer. And I think I got about 25 of his books. And I copied a lot of that from what he said in his book. So I tell you, you got those spare pages in your book toward the end. Please include that because people will write you good reviews. And I've got some wonderful reviews on my books. And they're all strangers. So many of them are strangers. Now, the last section is uploading to Amazon. You can find some great videos to show you how to upload your books to Amazon. It can be a little bit complicated, but I worked it out somehow, so other people can work it out. If you get a special price from Bill Vincent, he will do that for you. Now, Bill will take a certain percentage of your paperbacks and a certain percentage of your Kindle, but it would just save a whole lot for you. Now, this is what I'm going to end on. And I actually did a Toastmasters. I went to Toastmasters for 2 years to get all my ums and ahs out of my speech. I went for 2 years and I couldn't get them out. I just couldn't get them out. And you've noticed that in this audiobook and in this video that I say a lot of ums and ahs. You get an and an ah when you're thinking for the next thing to say. I get a lot less of them when I'm speaking from a script or notes like I am here. But if you see or watch any of my videos or listen to my audiobooks that I do myself, you'll find ums and ahs when I'm just free speaking and I'm just waiting between sentences to be able to work out what I'm going to say next. So the last heading is things that you need right for best success. So things that you need to do right for best success. You need a great title that attracts a reader. Now, a title has to promise a benefit to the person. If it doesn't promise a benefit, people aren't going to pick it up. My Life, the True Story, well, no one knows who you are, so why are they going to read it? 7 Keys to Intimacy with Jesus, that's a great title. They want intimacy with Jesus. They type intimacy with Jesus, and keys is a powerful word. It's one of the best top 20 words in headlines that are popular in the world. Keys is like a really popular one. And the number 7 is more powerful than the word 7. So 7 keys to intimacy with Jesus is like, well, I want intimacy with Jesus. I wonder what those 7 keys are. So that's a great title. Now, you want a stunning cover. You want a great cover. And that's why I'd even, if you got in touch with me, if you got in touch with me, I'd even help you with your title, and I'd help you pick a cover out of a stock image site to send to you. If you get this audio book or you get this video and you get in touch with me, I will help you with your title. I'll help you pick the picture for your cover. And I may even work with you to get a Kira 777 working for you and get that. Now, so you need a good cover. You need a blurb that's more attractive. So your heading, your title has to be attractive. The blurb has to solve the title. It has to go deeper on the title. To be a success, you need 4 to 5 great positive reviews. You need great content in the book, and you need great editing. If you get all those things right, your book will sell. But I can tell you this much, that there's a lot of competition in the market, and you could have a book that only sells 2 copies a month or 1 copy a month. And so this is the message I've got for you. Have you got a message that you would spend $1,500 to $2,000 to share with people? Have you got a message that if you change 10 lives with your $2,000, you've done enough? Have you got something in you that's so important to share with people that you drop $2,000 to help those people? And that may sound really negative of me. What do you mean 10 people? Well, maybe 200 people will read your book over the next 3 years. But if 10 were really affected, would it be worth it? Can you spend money on other people? Have you got a message that's going to change lives? And that's how I felt about my 55 books. And I've slowed right down. I may even do 2 or 3 books a year now. But for 3.5 years, I was putting out 1 book a month or more. And so one of my books is how I wrote 1 book a month, and I go into that. Have you got a message that's going to change lives? And if you have, invest some money. Now, you can go to a cheap so-called editor on Fiverr who says they know how to edit, and you can get cheap as cheap as cheap. I just won't do it. And I hope that's not too hard for you. I hope I'm not being too insensitive with you, saying, well, I haven't got the money, I can't afford that, I can't do that. And if you can't do that, well, maybe just make your book a video and see how many people watch it. Now, here's my contact details for you who are watching the audiobook, listening to the audiobook. My name is Matthew Robert Payne, and you can find me on Facebook. On the first few pages, normally on the first page of Google, it should show. So if you got Matthew Robert Payne, yeah, so it's the 3rd link on Matthew Robert Payne. Matthew Robert Payne Ministries is the first link. On Matthew Robert Payne's Ministries, it should have my phone number, and you can write to me at survivorsanctuary@gmail.com. It's got that email address there, so you can contact me there. It's got my phone number, email address, Matthew Robert Payne. You can find me on Facebook. It's best to contact me on Facebook. So there's one of the R's. So I can help you, I can coach you a little bit in producing your own book, and I can help you out. I hope that you really enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll do the research you need to produce your book. Don't read 10 books. This is what I found with an author that I was sitting on a taxi rank as a taxi driver 27 years ago, and the book was on how to write a book, and he says, I used to lecture people on how to write a book, and at the very beginning of the semester, I used to say to them, who came to this class to learn how to write a book? And put up your hand, and everyone put their hands up. And then he said, who honestly wants to write a book and just doesn't want to muck around? Who seriously wants to write a book? Seriously wants to write a novel? And people put up their hand. And he said, stand up if you seriously want to write a book. And he came to this class to write it. You want to write a fictional book. And they stood up, and he says, okay, leave the class. He said, book in next semester, go and write your book now. You don't need me just go and write your book. And when you come next semester, we'll fix your book up and edit it, get it ready to be published. And people walked out of the class, and he said a lot of them wrote the book. So there's certain type of people that go from book to book to book to book, reading books on how to write a book. I even got a really negative review on one of my books from someone who said it didn't really say a lot in my book. And he's obviously a person that goes from book to book to book, and he should have written his book by now. And so this title that I used in this audio book and YouTube video, Handy Advice for People Self-Publishing Non-Fiction. It's just handy advice. Remember, speak to the one person face-to-face in a cafe. Just tell them all about that subject. Heal them, fix them, inspire them, encourage them. And do it for 10 of them. Get in your mind that you got 10 people that you're going to sit face-to-face and talk to them. Do it for 10 and drop $200 per person. And just go and affect 10 people. Get that in your mind and ring me up or contact me on Facebook Messenger, and we'll have a chat and we'll talk over Facebook phone, and I'll help step you through this process. God bless you and keep you, and I'd love to hear your feedback. See you.